Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're going to be talking about the Star BM 9mm, a compact service pistol in the same niche as now occupied by guns like the Glock 19, a duty-sized pistol that can flex into concealed carry. These were produced from 1972 to 1992, for a good 20 years, and were adopted by the Spanish Guardia Civil and other Spanish police agencies, in addition to the security forces of several African nations. It is an all-steel pistol with a 3 3/4 inch barrel. It weighs 34 ounces, and we're going to get more into that on the tabletop. But first, I'd like to thank my Patreons. Your contributions helped purchase this pistol. Thank you very much. This all costs money, and you're helping. So, let's get into it. As stated, the Star BM is a compact pistol, being about 7 inches long, 5 1/4 inches high, and not at all thick, except for the grips, which bring it to almost 1 1/4 inches wide. But with flatter grips, it would be very, very svelte indeed. The safety blocks the hammer in both the uncocked position, thermally blocks the hammer, or in the cocked and locked position. And if you can see, that hammer is cammed back slightly by it, because the safety acts directly on the hammer instead of on the sear as it would in a 1911. For other safeties of dubious value, there is a magazine disconnect. It's a European thing. We don't understand that over here in America. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm told it's easily removed. I may or may not ever bother. So the magazine release operates and looks exactly like a Colt. The magazines do not drop free because Europe. They actually train to retain their magazines on reloads, so they don't want it just falling out. One of the differences between this and a 1911 is that rather than a sliding trigger attached to the bow, this has a hinged trigger that acts on a separate piece. And the trigger has a bit of take-up, and then you hit the wall and put in the magazine, because the magazine safety. You hit the wall, and then it breaks crisp and clean with minimal over travel. The reset is extremely short, like short for a 1911 short. And you're right back to that nice crisp 4-pound trigger pull. It's really very good. Sights are, they're fine. They're okay for a service pistol of this vintage. Originally, the front sight was just flat metal, and I added 40 line per inch serrations and painted it because that's how I roll. And that is very likely to be the only modification I ever make to this gun, because it's pretty good as is. Also, this is, for me, pretty much a range toy, maybe shoot an action shooting international match. And, you know, that's about it. Now, these have a reputation for not feeding hollow points, and they don't. But I made a slight tweak to the magazine lips with pliers, and now it sucks down hollow points just fine. You probably saw in the shooting video that I had a couple of failures to go into battery. That was on my first magazine through the gun, and never repeated. And I would guess that the cause of it was that when I looked inside the gun, it was extremely filthy. Really, really. I don't think the gun had been cleaned since the turn of the century. The gun came with, this particular gun came with 2 extra magazines, which may or may not be aftermarket. They're completely unmarked, but they have this crappy looking plastic follower. I don't know, maybe that's what Star switched to in later production guns. Maybe they're triple K, I don't know. This magazine works just fine. The other magazine, which looks identical, does not even remotely work. And since I mentioned I might be shooting an action shooting international match with this, I thought it best to have another extra magazine. So I have a much abused Pro Mag magazine for a SIG P225, which I had previously modified to work in my Beretta Model 1951, and subsequently modified to fit in this gun by replacing the follower with a follower from yet another 9mm magazine, and modifying the mag release stud slightly. And now it fits in the gun nicely, locks in properly, locks the slide open, and feeds reliably. So there's my extra mag. Now, this has some things that it does different than a 1911. We've already covered the hanging trigger and things like that. But you will notice that there is something here that is not a recoil cap, and it is fully surrounded by the bushing. To dismantle the gun for cleaning or maintenance, you pull back the slide, lock the safety into this notch, and then you can just easily pop the slide stop right out. Then you just release it, and it comes right off the gun very nicely. There is a fully captured recoil system on a full-length steel guide rod, which I adore. It makes life so much easier. Once that's been removed, you can rotate the bushing, remove it, slide the barrel out the front, just like a 1911. You'll note that they do still use the falling link 1911 style, even though it was pretty well known by 1972 that there were better ways to do it, but what the hell. It also has only one locking lug. But other than that, it's a very 1911-ish barrel, because if it works, it works. And really, the falling link, there are better ways to do it, but honestly, this does not seem to have been a problem in decades of service for these guns. Reassembly, you just slide the barrel in front, 1911 style. Insert the bushing, which you must do before you put the guide rod in, because otherwise you can't. Slip the guide rod into place. There is virtually no tension on this in place, which is also nice. Slide it back onto the frame, line up the link, slip this in, lock the slide back, push the part in, release it, and you are ready to go if you have a magazine in. So, it does some things better than a 1911. But there are advantages to the 1911 platform as well. So as for shooting the gun, as I said, the sights are adequate. The trigger is very good. And I had some concerns because the beaver tail here does artificially elevate the bore axis somewhat. But in practice, this really did not turn out to be an issue. I had no trouble keeping double taps in the A zone at 7 yards. And I suspect the 34-ounce weight has a lot to do with that. So, to address the clickbaity headline elephant in the room, is the Star BM a better 1911? Well, they did a number of changes to the 1911 design that I cannot help but think are an improvement. Using the captured guide rod, full-length guide rod system. Great thing. I rather like what they've done with the safety in terms of blocking the hammer from moving. That's all to the good. Has a very nice shape in the hand. Does not have removable bits on the back or a grip safety. And I think, again, that's all to the good. Is it a better 1911? Yes and no. They've made changes that are undeniably good things. On the other hand, they've made the gun less modular by not having pieces you can change out back here. And the sliding trigger has greater potential than the hanging trigger for if you want to produce a super, super fine trigger pull. So, and then we get to aftermarket. You can get magazines and parts for these. That's the aftermarket. With the Colt, it's Lego. It's modular. You can do whatever the hell you want to it. So, again, the answer is yes and no. And the unabashedly clickbaity headline notwithstanding, there are ways it is better. There are ways it is not. And I do like the fact that it's sized for a 9mm. It's a bit more svelte than a 1911, even one chambered in 9mm, even a Commander. And it's a good size. It's a good... The weight is an issue for some people in this day and age, but it does help make the gun very manageable in defensive style shooting. Now, of course, these are a surplus gun. The police got finished with them, and they sent them off to America, where we'll buy anything if it's cheap enough. And they're genuinely a very good gun. There is really, Spanish guns have a reputation, and they've earned it. But the Star is solid. It's well made. It's well finished. It's, it gives up nothing to a Colt in fit and finish, or at least a service grade Colt. And yes, the grips are plastic, but they're checkered, nicely shaped, not too thick, and they feel very good in the hand. The ergonomics are very good. And this is a great conversation piece, range toy, bit of nostalgia. And yes, when they were super cheap, when they were first imported, you could get these for around $200. So, it was a worthy potential entree into a defensive pistol for people on a very limited budget. This is no longer the case. They're not that cheap anymore. And there are a lot of very high quality modern guns that can be had for less money than these. And I don't know why you wouldn't if you're operating strictly on practical criteria. Now, personally, I very much like this gun. It is, it's just a good, solid performer. It's a good size. It's really nice to shoot. And, really in terms of a surplus range toy, and that it could flex into concealed carry or home defense, it fits the bill. But it is not a modern gun. It should not be confused with a modern gun, and it should not be necessarily a replacement for a modern gun. I like it anyway. So, if you like the video as much as I like this gun, please click like below, because that's how YouTube knows I'm here and gets my videos out for more people to see them. Anyway, I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.